Hey guys, what's going on? It's that home theater dude. Got a brand new episode for you today. I just got delivered something massive in the mail. This is the Parasound a31 amplifier. It's a 3-channel amplifier. This thing is crazy. I know a lot of people have done Parasound reviews before, especially throughout the YouTube community, but I have not seen anyone do the A31, and it's very, very common to want to amplify your front stage. Not so much the rest of your speakers, but the front stage I would say is the most important. I've had my front stage amplified via the Outlaw Audio model 2200s for almost the last year. It's 200 watts per channel, very, very efficient, and it's a big step up from the AVR power that I've been using from before. This thing pumps out 250 watts a channel at 8 ohms, and I'm pretty sure it's stable up to 1 ohm, but I'm gonna have to go and double check on that. The power ratings for this one at 4 ohms is gonna be 400 watts a channel, so very, very impressive. And as you guys know, Parasound is synonymous with hi-fi, audiophile type of equipment, and I'm actually really excited to actually get this thing unboxed and use it in my home theater for an extended period of time, so I can give you guys a really good description of what it's like to actually own one of these things. So if you give me a minute, I'll go ahead and get it unboxed right after the intro. Expecting it to be that big. Let's go ahead and get a quick measurement for you guys. Overall, it's just looking like standard 17 1/4, but if you're counting the heat sinks on this thing, it's going to be 17 3/4. Actually 17 5/8. So I mean, the footprint of this thing is actually very, very, very large. I wasn't expecting these massive heat sinks on there, but also with these on the side, there's 3 little areas. You can actually take these off and then put in the actual rack mount. So if you want these rack mounted, I think that's going to help out with these too, because I read the owner's manual and it says not to actually put these in a non-ventilated area. So if you want to have these rack mounted, make sure that it's in a well-ventilated area. Like a lot of the rack mounts, if they're worth their grain of salt, they're going to have some ventilation on them, like a fan or something. And then some of them are just open to the actual environment. But these don't have fans in them, and they did a lot of clever things to actually make it work without fans, because I mean, obviously if you're looking for audiophile grade stuff, you don't want fans kicking on and destroying destroying the vibe. So this is crazy. Look at that thing. So let's just take a moment and appreciate the styling of this thing. It's very simple, elegant, and it is a very sturdy construction. This thing is heavy, weighs 65 pounds unboxed. 3-channel amplification, bulletproof amplification, hi-fi audio, and this was designed by John Curl. If you guys don't know who he is, he worked on the original Mark Levinson amplifiers as well as with Wilson Audio. It has Class A AB amplification, and these heat sinks really help out with that as well to keep the heat down and be fanless. Back of the amplifier is just very simple construction, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So there's a couple different things that are on here that you need to pay attention to. First and foremost is how you want this thing to turn on every single time. So you have the option of doing an audio in, which is my favorite. I really, really like this feature in external amplifiers, because if you have an AVR type of home theater setup and you don't want to get up every single time to turn on these amps, I mean, it makes it so much simpler. My subwoofers have it, my Outlaw Audios have it, and it just makes everything just so simple whenever it senses your signal, and then it turns this thing on. So these have an adjustable threshold to turn it on. So if you want the threshold to be, I would set it to louder. That's just a pro tip from me, because whenever this thing actually hears a signal, it will turn on, and then after 8 minutes it's going to turn off after the signal is gone. So if you have it set too low, it may turn on inadvertently, or it may take a really long time to turn off, or it may not turn off at all. So what I say is just go ahead and put it a little higher. That way it'll sense the signal at the normal volume, and then it'll kick off whenever you need it to. Over here we're going to have the manual setup right in the middle. So if you set this little guy to the middle, all you got to do is have this thing plugged into a power source, and then if you want to, whenever you want to use it, just press the button on the front, and then it'll come out of standby mode, and then it'll be ready to work. Or you can pop it down to the bottom right here, and then that's going to set it to 12 volt trigger. And if you guys missed it, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to my Emotivia video right up here. With that one, I basically explained how triggers work. It's basically a kind of a handshake type of thing. Whenever one component has a signal, it's going to send a signal, kind of like a relay, to the next component that you want to turn on. So it's actually kind of cool. A lot of the AVRs and a lot of the stereo receivers from the past used to work on that, and a lot of people really like it. They have, you know, trigger outs on projectors, they have them on TVs, they have them on AVRs, different things like that. So it's actually really cool. But one thing I will say is with these 12 volt triggers, they have a max voltage. So if you want to actually daisy chain these things, you can, but it depends on your AVR, because that one's the most sensitive one in the actual chain, that if you daisy chain them past a certain amount, it may mess with the internal circuitry or the internal signal of the actual trigger itself, and then you can run into problems with that. I basically read that the first time I did my Outlaw audios, and then it said the exact same thing whenever I read the manual on the Parasound. So let's go ahead and jump over here in the middle. Now with this is the bread and butter of the actual amplifier. This basically is how you connect your incoming signal and then your outgoing signal. So basically whenever you want to hook this up, if you're going to have an AVR that's worth its salt, it's going to have balanced output, so they can go to this balanced input. XLR cable, you basically just plug it in there and then you're ready to go. And then I would plop this thing up to balanced, and then you're off to the races. Or you can put it down to unbalanced. This has a very positive feedback as well, this switch. Everything on here just tactily, it just feels very, very high quality. Here you have unbalanced, so this is going to be your traditional interconnect, your RCA, whatever you want to use. You can use the cheapies, but I mean, if you're going to be spending the cash on a Parasound, you obviously know that you may want to bump up your cable budget. So here in the center doesn't matter which one these are on, is you're going to be your gain. So standard THX gain is going to be 28.83, I think. But with a balanced input, you may want to keep this normal or maybe even turn it down. And then that depends on a lot of factors. Depends on your speaker sensitivity, depends on, you know, your room, the room gain, lots of different things like that. But if you have unbalanced, which is going to be down here, you may want to actually pump this up a little bit, because again, it depends on your AVR type of requirements, and then also your speakers, your speakers sensitivity. And then inherently, these are going to be a little more noisy than these are. So that's why the pros use the XLRs in their pre-pro type of setups, and that's just the way it is. But if you're going to be using one of these, you may want to actually turn this up. You don't have to. I wouldn't, you know, crank it all the way, but it basically depends on your setup. And then definitely do an Odyssey or YPAO or Dirac or whatever you guys have, or even, you know, buy a calibrated microphone. Do another calibration after you mess with these, just to make sure that everything is
distortion and hiss-free.
All right, so down here you're going to have your output. This is going to be your input into the amplifier. This is going to be what the amplifier spits out. So this is actually going to go to your speaker. This is going to be either a banana plug connection. You can actually just plug bare wire into there, whichever you want to do. But I mean, for me, I'm going to be using banana plugs, the locking ones, and that should work out pretty good for that. So you do the same thing for 1 channel, 2 channel, 3 channel, and this pumps out 250 watts a channel, which is awesome at 8 ohms. And then basically one more thing I want to talk about before I move on is these gains. You can actually use these independently. So you may have this one turned up more, this one turned up less, and then, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's all independent of each other, and it basically depends on your speaker requirements. So I think I kind of touched on that earlier, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on that before I moved on. So let's go ahead and go over here. Over here you have the very simple power in, on switch, on off switch, and then a fuse. Very simple stuff. Look right here, it says power consumption 1250 watts. That is absurd. Think about that in terms of light bulbs. It's just, it's the power requirements on this thing is just phenomenal. It's crazy. And tactily, whenever I was just feeling this, like just everything you touch here just seems very, very professional, positive feedback on everything. It's just tactically, this thing is really, really cool. Professional grade stuff. Obviously, you know that if you're looking at Parasound amplifiers, but I'm gonna go ahead and flip it around to the front, and then I'll talk about some of the functionality of this thing, and then I'll go ahead and get it hooked up for you guys. Operation of this thing is very simple. If you want to use it manually, just press a standby, and it'll turn on Whisper Quiet. So the front's very simple. You're just going to have a couple different things like the standby button. There's going to be a Parasound light that's going to be illuminated, and the 3-channel indicator lights at the bottom. Also over here, you're going to have a high temperature overload light, and these lights are not dimmable, so they will be visible in your room. So if that's going to bother you, I'd recommend putting them in a rack mount or out of sight, because in a dark environment, they will be visible. Well, I went ahead and got the Parasound amplifier installed. I did the Odyssey calibration on my setup. I watched a couple movies with it, and the AB from the model 2200s to this one, just off the cuff, out of the box performance. I could definitely tell a difference in between the Outlaws and the Parasound, but that's just a little teaser for a later video. I'll do like an AB type of thing. Maybe you guys will be able to tell the difference. A lot of the stuff you hear with sound is going to be subjective, and with coming from different types of amplification, from the Type H and then the AAB, I mean, things are going to be different either way. So, all right, well, I'm going to go in this video here. Make sure you guys like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time.